Boho Knotless bob. It's kind of like something what I have, but with knotless braids. And first I'm going to be showing y'all what kind of hair you want to use. This is the kind of hair that I use, the expressions hair. The kids length is like the perfect length, because for the bob, you don't want the hair to be too long, and then once you cut it, you don't want it to be like too choppy. But yeah, now we're gonna go over how to prep for this style. So I would really prep as much hair as you can, like without going overboard. You don't want to waste any hair, but we're doing medium, so the pieces like this size. Now you want to use some bulk hair. I'll show y'all some good brands of bulk hair. For the size of the bulk pieces, I will always recommend the size, like being close to the size of your braid, because you know you wouldn't want skinny braids with like thick hair coming out of the skinny braids, if that makes sense. So I kind of just did like this size of my curly pieces, about the same size that I did my braiding hair. So now that my client's hair is all prepped, let's get into it, y'all. So from the start, you want to make sure that your client's hair is blow dried well, or you can at least like run your fingers through it. So even though it looks like her hair isn't really blow dried well, I asked her if she had previously had a relaxer, and that's what it was. But I could tell that her hair was manageable, like from the start. But I first start by putting gel on the bottom of my client's hair. I do this with every single row, and you will see this throughout the tutorial. This is just to help ensure the longevity of the style, and also like the sleekness of each braid that we put in. And guys, it's important to, clean up every single part that you do. You'll realize that every row and every part that I do, I always go back through and clean it up. It's just nothing like a nice, sleek part. For the first row of my medium size, I start off with 3 braids. And you will see throughout my tutorial and through future tutorials that you may watch that I always pre-part my braids. I just feel like this gives you a map for the future of your braids, and it also helps you move quicker. Like, I realized if I do and focus on one thing at a time, then it just makes it easier in the long run, instead of like parting and then stopping and grabbing hair, and while I can just already have the parts ready and just braid for a certain amount of time. But you'll see. The next row, you're going to want to go from ear to ear, and this is going to be like the complete back part of the medium braids. And I really value like making sure a style is actually protective and not putting too much tension on my client's hair. So that's why I don't do as many parts as people would traditionally do, but I always make sure to give my clients enough. And on my website, I also have an option for my clients to add on fuller parts, because I know, like, personally, I do love fuller braids, especially like if they're smaller. But I always get my clients right with the perfect amount of braids for a nice protective style. But on this row, I usually do 5 braids, and you can do 3 braids, with the brick layering method, like with 2 braids of your choice on the bottom, if that makes sense. Well, I can just show y'all better than I can tell y'all this. But I usually do 5 braids on this row because on that next row, I do 10 braids. And it's just easier to break part when you know you're going back and forth between even and odd numbers. You'll figure it out once you do it. Once I have the 2 rows all parted, that's when I will go in and start to braid. Now, when I start off my knotless, I usually split the first piece of hair that I already have on the racks in half, and I started off overhanded. This is because it just gives a flat, seamless, knotless look. And then you will see that I switched to underhand braiding. I just find this to be more comfortable and easier for me to keep the braid looking seamless. And even though the hair is bob length, you want to keep adding in hair so that the braid looks a good size and that you also leave enough hair at the bottom to roll when we get done with the ends. I usually start adding in the boho hair as I go, and it depends on the client. I always ask my client, do they want a lot of curls or a little bit of curls? But if they want a lot of curls, then I'll add about 2 pieces per each braid. But if they don't, then I'll add 1 here, 2 on this braid, 2 on another braid. But you can see here at the end of the braid, I'm gonna leave a portion out that we're gonna roll up towards the end, and that's where I'm gonna tie my knot. You want this to be longer than the bob length that you're expecting, but you can just see this right here. Now as I'm starting to section off the next row, you want to make sure to put gel to push the hair up and help separate it from the previous row. I find this also helps my client's hairstyle last longer. I know some braiders don't do this, and you can definitely tell with the longevity and the results of their work. Now for the parting for the first row with medium at the top, I usually line it up to like where the corner of their eyebrow starts, but I know every braider has a different technique and you can use whichever one works best for you. But now I'm just going to go through and clean up this part. This is essential to keeping your client's hair intact and in the right form to where they can have a long-lasting style that is nice and neat. But I always start my medium off with this first row being a row of 10. And this is why the brick layering method works so well, because you can really use your previous row to base off the parts for your next row. You can see here that I'm just putting that part in the middle of the part because of the row below it. And since my client has a smaller head, I'm actually going to do 8 parts on this first row. The middle of the client's head is always a good place to see if your parts are even. And I'm just going through here because I know that we have 4 rows left. So I started with the middle part, and I kind of imagine 4 rows being equally separated in that space. But like I said, whatever works best for you, use that technique. So since we had 8 on the previous row, you guys should know how many we're going to have on this row. If you get 9, you're right. So we're going to have 9 on this next row. And I usually pre-part about 2 rows at a time, just so like I'm not spending too much time on pre-parting, but I'm also not spending too much time braiding either, if that makes sense. But this process really helps speed up everything. So now that we're at the top, guys, we're closer to getting finished. You just want to keep doing that brick layering method, and you know the next row will be 10. And then this row that I'm currently on actually has 9 braids, but that's only because my client's head is smaller. So you really have to adjust your parting style to fit people's hair type and also their head size as well. Now that we are finally at the top, this is where you can go ahead and part your client's head down the middle. This is called a universal part, to where your client can fit the braids either way. I don't do side parts or middle parts. I do universal parts. And on each row, I'm going to put 4 braids. Usually with these braids at the top, I include 2 pieces of boho hair per section, and I always go to the front of the client's head to make sure the part is actually in the middle. I know sometimes when you're over the top of someone's head, the middle can be misleading. Additionally, with the row that is over, I always make sure that my parts line up in a straight line. I just find this to create a seamless and flawless look for the finishing. Yay guys, you finally made it to the best part, which is the ending, and you can see the ends are kind of like in a straight line. You want to make sure you do this to make sure the bob is like on fleek all the way around. But at this point, this is when you can start to boil your water. It's essential with braiding to eliminate as much time as possible. So by boiling your water while you're going to be rolling the ends, you're basically killing 2 birds with 1 stone and saving extra time. Before I start rolling the ends, I just go through and separate the curly hair, pulling it upward while pulling the braid downward. I just don't like dipping the curly hair sometimes because you never know how it's going to react. And this is also a good method to use with synthetic curls as well. Once you get all the curls gathered that you want to, then you can either clip the curls up, or I usually just put it in like a separate ponytail up top, away from where we're going to be curling the hair at the bottom. Now it's time to roll the hair. I usually use the blue flexi rods. I think these are about 12 inches. And I usually do about 3 or 4 braids at a time. You just want to think about the thickness, and you want it to be easy to roll up. But you can see I'm not just rolling the hair regularly. I'm also twisting the hair as I roll up. But once you are done rolling up all of the braids, then you kind of want them to be at the same level. This will help to ensure that your bob looks right when you're done and ready to cut. Now guys, this next technique that I'm going to show you is a secret technique. I always make my clients slide down and put their head at the base of the chair just to make sure that they don't get burnt, and also so I don't get burnt. Especially with the bob length, it's more dangerous to dip this kind of length because it is so much closer to their face. But once you have dried off those ends, that's when you just want to go in and take out each one. You kind of want to unroll each one when you take it out. Now, this is when you can take down the curly hair. And you can see it's already giving flawless, y'all. Now you're going to put oil on those curls. I always preach to my clients that oil is better than foam or anything else for your curls because it helps keep the look without it having to dry. And you know, when you use that foam, it sometimes ends up looking crusty. Now, when cutting the bob, you want to make sure to cut it at a downward angle, going towards yourself on whichever side you're standing on. So I always do this downward angle like right at my client's shoulder, unless they specify that they want a longer or a shorter bob, or if they have longer hair, you want to go longer. But you do have to keep playing around and keep cutting more and more off. I would start off longer just so you won't mess up anything. For the back, I usually just cut straight across to match up to that other side that I just cut off. And I also keep the back a little bit longer so my clients can do ponytails, and also so it can be flawless all the way around. And once you get to the other side, you just want to imitate what you did on the other side, cutting downward diagonally. And last but not least, I always come to the front to make sure that the bob is even on both sides. You just want to push both sides of the hair to the front and make sure that the curls and the curly ends are evened up with each other. And just like that, guys, we're all done. This is the finished look. Let me know what you think. think and invest in yourself and your future and go buy my ebook. It will teach you about how I master styling as well as customer service, how to grow your braiding industry, how to start it, and just how to become an expert overall. Y'all don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe though, and thank you for watching.